They laughed when I shared my idea. Smirks, whispers, even a meme behind my back. I said nothing, just saved the recording. 2 weeks later, a billionaire watched that clip and called me. Not to mock me, he wanted to fund me. This is how I turned humiliation into a launchpad. It was supposed to be my moment. I'd spent weeks on the data, pulled late nights tweaking the deck, fine-tuning the numbers until every slide could stand on its own. This wasn't just an idea. I'd built a roadmap, customer insights, projected growth, implementation timelines. I even ran simulations to show market fit. By the time I clicked share screen on Zoom, I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the day I finally got through to them. I barely made it 5 slides in before I felt it start. The glances, the polite head nods from people who weren't really listening. I could hear someone typing. Someone else whispered something and laughed. I kept going anyway, pushing forward like momentum could carry me past the silence. Then I heard it. A muffled chuckle. And then another. I paused. My manager, Rob, leaned forward, eyes on a different tab. "Evan," he said, "let's move on. We've got a packed agenda." That was it. 5 weeks of work dismissed in 8 words. My voice caught in my throat. I just nodded and killed the screen share. They moved on to the next item like I hadn't just put my heart into that pitch. I sat there, face blank, camera on, willing myself not to react. One of my coworkers sent a private message. That was ambitious. No emoji, no tone, just that word. I knew what it meant. A joke, maybe. Maybe not. Either way, I was the guy who overshared, who thought too big. When the meeting ended, I didn't leave the call right away. I just sat there, staring at the empty screen. My ears were hot. My palms were cold. I'd always been the quiet one in the room, the guy who listened more than he spoke. But today I spoke, and they laughed. But here's what they didn't know. I watched the recordings. Every meeting is archived automatically. No one ever bothers to review them, but I do. I don't do it out of paranoia. I do it to learn, to watch my body language, to listen to my voice, to see what I missed. So I marked the timestamp and saved the clip. Not to send to HR or make a fuss, just to have it. For me. Later that night, I watched it again. Watched myself try to stay composed while they dismissed me. Watched the part where I explained the customer pain point and the model I'd built to solve it. Watched the room glaze over while I was explaining something real. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat with it. They didn't see it that day, and maybe they never would. But I saw it. I saw the potential. I saw the way the numbers came together, the way the product clicked. It wasn't a fantasy. It was a missed opportunity. And I wasn't going to let that be the end of it. I walked back to my desk, trying not to let the heat in my chest show on my face. Open floor plans are great for collaboration, they say. But not so great when you're trying to hide disappointment. Rob's voice still echoed in my head. Let's move on. Just like that, everything I'd built, everything I believed could actually make a difference, tossed aside like a side note on a to-do list. Brendan passed by my desk and smirked. Nice TED Talk, Evan. He meant it as a joke, maybe even a compliment wrapped in sarcasm. But it hit different. I forced a smile. Yeah, thanks, I said. He kept walking. I sat down and opened my laptop. The meeting recording was already uploading to the company archive, like always. Weekly strategy sessions, all saved to the cloud. Most people forget that. Or maybe they never paid attention to the red dot in the top corner of the screen. But I always noticed. It's the kind of detail I latch onto. Quiet habit. One I started back in my first job when someone tried to take credit for my work and I had nothing to prove otherwise. Never again. I scrolled to the timestamp, 12:47 p.m. That's when I started the pitch. I flagged it, renamed the clip, and saved a backup to my personal folder. Not because I was planning anything. Not because I wanted to get even. I just wanted the truth on record. A digital footprint of what really happened. The office buzzed around me. Someone was microwaving lunch. The sales team was laughing about some client call. For them, it was just another Monday. For me, it felt like a line had been drawn. Not the dramatic kind you shout across, but a quiet, internal kind. The kind that says, this is where I stop waiting to be noticed. I watched the clip again. Muted this time. Just watching the body language. Me, speaking with quiet intensity. Them, shifting in their chairs, tapping on phones, hiding their boredom behind smirks. The worst part wasn't the laughter, it was the indifference. I didn't feel rage. Not exactly. Just a slow, cold clarity. I wasn't surprised. I'd seen it coming in the way my emails were ignored, in how my ideas always needed a second opinion from someone louder. I wasn't even the first person this had happened to. But I was going to be the last one who stayed quiet about it. I closed the video and locked my screen. I didn't need to prove anything to them, not anymore. I had the footage, I had the model, I had the truth, and eventually I knew someone else would see it too. My name is Evan. I'm 33 years old. Product strategist by title, builder by instinct. I'm not the guy who talks over people in meetings. I'm the guy who listens while they do, then stays up until 2 a.m. making the idea better, even if no one's asking me to. I didn't grow up around tech. My dad worked nights at a packaging plant. My mom cleaned offices after dinner. I used to help her vacuum boardrooms at firms I'd one day work for. They didn't know what UX meant, but they understood discipline. They understood showing up every day, even when no one noticed, especially then. I was the first in my family to graduate college. No connections, no shortcuts, just scholarships, student loans, and a patchwork of side hustles that kept the lights on. I interned every summer, cold emailed startup founders until someone let me write copy for free, learned design tools on borrowed laptops, slept in my car during a product conference because I couldn't afford the hotel. You learn to be resourceful when failure isn't just personal, it's generational. I got my first full-time offer a week before graduation. I didn't celebrate, just got to work. I didn't care about titles, corner offices, or team drinks. I cared about systems. I cared about solutions. I cared about making things work better than they did yesterday. That's who I am. So when people ask why I didn't snap back in that meeting, why I didn't stand up and demand respect, I get it. They think silence means weakness, but they don't understand. Silence is a strategy. I don't fight for airtime in rooms that don't value what I'm building. I don't play loud to be seen. I build quietly, and I keep receipts. Every pitch that got dismissed, I saved it. Every idea that got picked up after someone else repeated it louder, I archive the email trail. I don't keep score out of spite. I do it because patterns matter, evidence matters, the truth matters. And here's the thing. I never wanted to be anyone's boss. I never cared about leading just for the title. But I always knew that when the moment came, I'd be ready, because I was never waiting for permission. I was just preparing for my turn. That's the part they didn't see. While they were laughing, I was documenting. While they were moving on, I was taking notes. I wasn't chasing recognition. I was building infrastructure, quietly, deliberately. Because one day the right person was going to look past the noise, and when they did, I was going to be ready. It wasn't just an idea, it was a blueprint. Months of work, layered and deliberate. I wasn't pitching a dream, I was laying out a plan. Real market data. Gaps no one else was paying attention to. Shifts in consumer behavior I'd tracked over 12 months. A solution not only viable but scalable. And still, somehow, invisible. I had been watching the trend lines tighten around a problem no one else had labeled yet. That's where I do my best work, in the in-between spaces where everyone sees friction, but no one calls it opportunity. I spent nights comparing models from adjacent industries, tracing where the frustration came from and why no one had solved it. The more I looked, the more convinced I became. We had the tools, we just didn't have the will. Or maybe we didn't have leadership that could see past next quarter's KPIs. I built mock-ups in Figma during lunch breaks, spent weekends coding interactive wireframes. When I couldn't sleep, I wrote use cases. Thought through onboarding flows, retention strategies, even how we'd position it in investor updates. I built it like we were going to launch tomorrow, even though I knew they'd probably never let it leave the idea stage. Still, I believed. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I got it in front of them the right way, with the right data, the right slides, the right tone, they'd see what I saw. That was my mistake. Thinking clarity alone would make them care. What I didn't account for was comfort. My idea required change, restructuring, resources. It meant admitting that the current roadmap was too narrow, too reactive. And when people are comfortable, change feels like a threat, even if it's necessary. So instead of a discussion, I got polite nods and smirks. I got cut off before I could reach the parts that mattered. And when Rob said, "Let's move on," it hit me harder than I thought it would. Not because I needed validation, but because I'd believed this would be the turning point. I had trusted the system to reward substance. I was wrong. I sat with that realization for a long time. Let it burn, but not break me. This wasn't my first rejection, and it wouldn't be my last. But it was the first time I realized just how much I'd been asking permission without meaning to. From that moment on, I stopped trying to get them to see it, and I started looking for someone else who would. I didn't know who or when or how. I just knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to bury this blueprint. No one ever told me I didn't belong. That would have been too obvious, too crude. This place didn't run on open confrontation. It ran on performance, optics, thin smiles and well-practiced nods, politeness used like punctuation, not sincerity. And in that space, exclusion didn't wear a name tag. It came dressed as silence. I noticed it most after meetings. The way people clapped each other on the back, circled up at the coffee machine, shared inside jokes from Slack threads I was never part of. My ideas got polite shrugs. A "that's interesting," followed by a redirect. Then someone else would say something, louder, vaguer, and suddenly there was energy in the room. Now that could work. Same skeleton, just different packaging, and a louder voice. I used to tell myself it was unintentional, that I was just being quiet, maybe too reserved, that if I put myself out there more, things would shift. So I tried. More eye contact, more follow-up emails, more participation in the after-work bar trivia nights I never cared for. None of it mattered, because in the end, they weren't rejecting the way I spoke. They were ignoring the substance of what I said. There was a rhythm to the culture here. Speak with confidence, not clarity. Say something that sounds bold, even if it crumbles under scrutiny. You won't get points for being right. You'll get them for being early, loud, and unchallenged. People learn that fast. I just refused to play along. And that's the thing. I didn't want to be the loudest voice. I just wanted to be heard. Really heard. I didn't need applause or a title bump or someone to shout "great idea" across the floor. I just wanted my work to matter. For someone to see the hours I'd put in and say, "This could change something." But that wasn't how things worked around here. The real meetings happened after the meetings, at lunch, in Slack DMs, over craft coffee or Peloton side chats. My name didn't come up in those rooms because I wasn't built for casual politics. I didn't flatter, I didn't gossip, I didn't oversell. I built, quietly, consistently, and maybe that made me forgettable, or maybe it just made me inconvenient. Because someone like me disrupts the rhythm, doesn't play the game, doesn't feed the loop of validation built on noise and charm. Still, I stayed. Not because I was loyal to them, but because I wasn't done yet. I had one more card to play, and I wasn't about to fold just because they couldn't see its value yet. What they never realized was that while they were talking circles around each other, I was writing the next chapter, one they wouldn't get to control. I opened a new email window, addressed it to myself, and typed one word into the subject line: proof. Underneath it, I pasted the link to the meeting recording, marked the timestamp, 12:47 p.m., and added a short note. Pitch begins here, ends when Rob cuts me off. Then I hit send. That was it. No confrontation, no snarky follow-up, just a clean digital receipt. A habit I developed years ago, back when I was a junior associate in a different company, sitting in another room where people nodded while I spoke and did the opposite the next day. I'd learned fast. Don't argue in the moment. Argue later, with receipts. I kept a personal folder, tucked away, password protected, synced to a drive no one else had access to. It held notes, slide decks, early drafts, version histories. Not because I was paranoid, but because I was thorough. Because I'd seen too many ideas get reimagined by louder people. Too many initiatives suddenly take off after being declared not aligned when I proposed them. I didn't keep track to call people out. I kept track so I wouldn't have to. The email sat in my inbox like a sealed envelope. No fireworks, no drama, just a line in the sand. One I drew quietly, without raising my voice or slamming a door. That's how I do things. I don't explode. I record, I file, I wait. Silence isn't surrender. Not for someone like me. Silence is strategy. It's patience weaponized. Because the truth is, most people talk themselves into mistakes. They ramble, they guess, they forget what they promised 3 meetings ago. But if you're quiet, really quiet, you start to see the patterns. You start to know what's coming before they do. That's what made this idea different. It wasn't born from a brainstorm or a last-minute deck. It was the result of patterns, of observation, of weeks watching where the friction really was and knowing exactly how to reduce it. But they couldn't see that. They didn't want to. Because admitting I had something worth listening to meant admitting they'd missed it. So I didn't force it. I just saved the evidence. That night, I sat in my apartment, the city buzzing somewhere outside my window, the glow of my monitor casting shadows across the floor. I rewatched the clip one more time, listened to my voice, steady, clear, calm. Watched Rob cut me off, watched the smirk on Brendan's face. Then I closed the tab and went to bed. They had the noise, I had the file, and when the time came, that would be enough. It was a Wednesday. I remember because I'd just microwaved last night's leftover curry and was halfway through it at my desk when I got the message. Slack ping. Daryl from Ops. Dude, this went viral on internal Slack. There was a link, no context, no emoji. Just that message and a YouTube link set to unlisted. I clicked. It was the recording. The one I'd flagged. The pitch. My pitch. Someone had clipped it, just my part, beginning to end. Then they slapped on a title in bold red text across the top of the screen. When you think you're Steve Jobs, but you're actually a summer intern. Laughter echoed in the background. Sound effects. The video jumped and zoomed in on my face at weird angles while I spoke, like some cheap parody sketch. I watched it, frozen. They hadn't doctored my words, just the tone around it, the framing. The caption told you what to feel before I even opened my mouth. And people felt it. Daryl messaged again. It's everywhere, man. Marketing channel, dev banter, even popped up in one of the exec threads. I didn't respond. I refreshed the video. 27 views, then 39, then 50. It wasn't exploding, not in the public sense. But it was enough. Enough to humiliate. Enough to make me the guy with the TED Talk. That label stuck fast. By the afternoon, people I barely spoke to were stopping by my desk with crooked smiles and raised eyebrows. Hey, saw your presentation. Bold stuff, man. I nodded. Said nothing. Let them walk away with their chuckles and side glances. Let them think what they wanted. But inside, I was quiet for a different reason. Because someone had shared that clip. Someone inside that call went out of their way to edit it, caption it, and share it. Not just to mock me, but to make sure I stayed in a box they'd already decided I didn't belong outside of. And they thought it was funny, thought I'd just laugh along. But I didn't laugh. I copied the link. I added it to my personal file. Then I downloaded the video and stripped it of the sarcastic edits. Cut it down to just me speaking, clean and unedited. I watched that version instead. I watched myself laying out an idea with logic, calmness, structure. No gimmicks, no memes, just facts. And I thought, if someone found this clip funny enough to mock, maybe someone else might find it smart enough to believe in. I didn't know how or when, but I knew that video was going to matter one day, just not in the way they expected. I didn't realize how far it had spread until I checked one of the less formal Slack channels. #random thoughts. The digital water cooler of the company. That's where the link showed up again. This time with a fresh caption, Innovation Energy. I clicked it. Same video, same sarcastic title. But now it had comments underneath. Ambitious much? Who let TEDx in here? Pitch deck or performance art? The laughing emojis multiplied. Reaction chains, a few GIFs. Someone even posted a popcorn meme like they were watching a spectacle. I scrolled through it slowly, my stomach tightening with each new reply. These weren't just anonymous internet trolls. These were people I passed in the hallway, people I'd presented with. Some of them had never even spoken to me before. They knew my name now. I read every comment. Then I read them again. Not to wallow, not to punish myself. I needed to know, needed to remember. I clicked on each commenter's profile, saved screenshots, logged names in a private doc. Not out of revenge, but because patterns matter. Because when this story turns, and I knew it would, I wanted to remember who laughed. I didn't respond in the thread, didn't defend myself. I knew better than to step into a dog pile when it's already rolling downhill. Anything I said would have just become more fuel for the mockery. So I stayed quiet, watched them laugh, watched them feed off each other's wit. I imagined them sharing it in group chats, joking over drinks after work. The ambitious guy with his wild ideas and his too serious tone. I bet they never even listened to what I was actually saying. But I had, and I knew I wasn't wrong. That was the part that kept me steady, because buried underneath all the mockery was something else. Attention. They didn't ignore the video. They shared it. They watched it. And that meant something. It meant the idea had weight. Maybe they didn't understand it. Maybe they didn't want to. But they couldn't ignore it. And if they couldn't ignore it, maybe someone else couldn't either. I closed Slack, shut off notifications, sat back in my chair. Outside my window, the city kept moving. Cars, voices, everything normal. But inside, something had shifted. I wasn't just disappointed anymore. I was awake. Being the joke doesn't break you, not if you know who you are. Not if you've been building something real while they've been building punchlines. Let them laugh. Let them mock. Because I was still holding the blueprint. And they had no idea what was coming next. The memo hit like a quiet explosion. Tucked into our inboxes on a Thursday morning, subject line, confidentiality reminder, internal media sharing policy. At first glance, it looked like the usual legal boilerplate, HR-friendly wording, neutral tone, and that unmistakable scent of corporate damage control. But 2 lines in, I knew exactly what it was about. Unauthorized clips from internal meetings had been shared outside the company. Violated NDAs. Breach of confidentiality. Disciplinary action pending investigation. I read it twice. Then I leaned back in my chair and let the weight of it settle. Someone had taken the joke too far. The video, the one they clipped and memed and passed around Slack like a party favor, had made it beyond our firewall. Someone uploaded it to a private startup forum known for roasting bad pitches and cringe culture. And now legal was involved. Around the office, the tone shifted. The jokes stopped. The hallway laughter, once casual and constant, grew strained and self-conscious. I saw people close tabs a little faster, heard the tension in whispered side conversations by the coffee machine. They weren't laughing now. The thing about office culture built on sarcasm and soft clicks is that it falls apart fast under scrutiny, especially when the people in power start asking questions. No one wanted to be the one who pushed it too far. No one wanted to be the reason the company's name showed up in the wrong kind of headline. I didn't say anything, just watched the quiet panic ripple through the floor. Brendan stopped by my desk, tried to make small talk. I nodded but didn't return the energy. He lingered for a second, then walked away. I could feel it. He didn't know how much I knew, and that made him nervous. Later that afternoon, I saw Rob, my manager, having a closed-door conversation with someone from legal. The door was glass, but the tension was loud. He didn't look smug this time. He looked tired, maybe even worried. I opened my inbox and reread the memo. The company was investigating the source of the leak, meaning someone was digging through logs, download histories, IP addresses. And when they found whoever had clipped and uploaded that recording without permission, it wouldn't just be an awkward HR meeting. It would be a liability. Part of me felt vindicated, but I didn't celebrate. I wasn't here for revenge. I was here for something bigger. I just wanted the idea, the real idea, to be taken seriously, not distorted, not reduced to a punchline. And now, ironically, the very people who mocked it were being forced to treat it like something dangerous, something worth investigating. That irony wasn't lost on me, so I stayed quiet. Let the investigation run its course. Let them search for the source while I kept building, because they still didn't realize. The thing they tried to laugh away had already started to move. It was a Friday, slow morning. I'd just poured a cup of stale office coffee and sat down to clear out notifications when I saw it. An unread message on LinkedIn. I almost didn't click it. Probably spam, I figured. Another recruiter pitch or someone trying to sell me a course on personal branding. But something made me open it. Subject: quick question. Message: are you the guy from the meeting clip? Call me. Alan R. Vale. At first I stared at it like it was written in a different language. Alan Vale. The name didn't need a second read. Tech billionaire, founder of Vale Systems, turned a college side project into a global infrastructure company, then pivoted into investing and became the guy who spotted breakout ideas before they were even ideas. That Alan R. Vale. I laughed out loud, not because it was funny, but because it was impossible. There was no way. Had to be a prank. Someone messing with me. Brendan, maybe. Or one of the marketing guys with too much time on their hands. But the profile was real, verified, thousands of followers, years of posts, articles, interviews. I reread the message. Short, direct. No fluff. It didn't feel like a joke. It felt intentional. I copied the name into Google anyway, cross-checked the LinkedIn link. No red flags. Same profile he used in podcasts. Same tone I'd seen in interviews. Blunt, no patience for corporate theater. I sat there for a while, just staring. Heart beating faster than it should have. I checked the timestamp. He'd sent it 10 minutes ago. He was probably still online. I clicked reply and typed, "Yes, that was me. I'd be open to a call." He responded 2 minutes later. "Send me your number. I'll call in 10. I gave him my personal cell and walked to the empty conference room at the end of the hall. Closed the door, hands cold, mouth dry. I didn't tell anyone, didn't even bring my laptop. Just waited, staring at the blank wall and the cheap plastic phone on the table. It rang. "Evan?" "Speaking." "This is Alan Vale." No assistant, no layers. Just the voice I'd heard 100 times in interviews and tech panels. Calm, sharp, no wasted syllables. "I saw the meeting clip," he said. "Not the memed version, the real one, the pitch." I swallowed. "Okay." "You were onto something. The problem, the way you structured the market entry. It was sharper than 90% of the decks I see every week. You built that alone?" "Yes." "I want to hear more, not about the people who laughed, about the idea." In that moment, the noise dropped away. The jokes, the mockery, the Slack threads, gone. All that remained was the thing I'd built, finally seen by someone who mattered. I wasn't sure what I expected from the call, but it wasn't that. Alan R. Vale, calm, focused, voice like it had been cut with a scalpel, asked straight questions. No small talk, no flattery. He wasn't calling to soothe my ego or trash the people who laughed. He wanted to talk about the idea. He had watched the full pitch, not the meme, not the sarcastic remix, the real one. Raw, unedited. He said he found it through someone in his portfolio network. Someone had sent it around as a joke, and Vale, curious, clicked. "I was waiting for it to fall apart," he said. It didn't. He noticed the smirks, the eye rolls, the moment Rob cut me off. "I've seen that look," he said. "From investors when I pitched the first version of my platform. But you held your ground. You stayed focused. That told me a lot." Then he said something that I still haven't forgotten. "Your data is sharper than 90% of the decks I get pitched, and I see 20 a week." I didn't know what to say to that. I just muttered, "Thank you." He asked if I had more, not just the slides, but deeper models, growth scenarios, operational planning, customer behavior data. I said yes. I had all of it. He paused. "Send it," he said. "Clean versions, no fluff. Just show me the bones." We ended the call 10 minutes later. I sat in that conference room long after the line went dead, phone still in my hand, trying to process what just happened. Not disbelief, not shock, just a slow flood of realization. It wasn't a prank. He saw it. He actually saw it. And more than that, he understood it. That night, I stayed up past midnight, pulling together the cleanest version of the full proposal. No noise, no drama. Just the numbers, the strategy, and the product design laid bare. I stripped out anything that felt like it was written to impress a manager and replaced it with the language I used when I talked to myself. Precise, unapologetic. I hit send at 12:47 a.m., the exact timestamp of when my pitch began in that meeting. Then I closed my laptop and just sat there, alone in my apartment, letting the silence feel like something different for once. Not exclusion, not dismissal. This time, it felt like momentum, like something had shifted beneath my feet. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't pitching uphill anymore. I was finally on level ground, maybe even slightly downhill. We met 2 days later in a glass-walled office in the city, one of those off-grid spots investors use when they don't want to be seen. No company branding, no fancy entrance, just a small lobby, a quiet elevator, and a receptionist who already knew my name before I introduced myself. Alan R. Vale was exactly how he sounded on the phone, unapologetically focused. No handshake small talk, no tell me about yourself. He motioned to a seat across from him and said, "Show me." I opened my laptop. Full screen, clean deck, no transitions, no gimmicks, just the work. I walked him through it slide by slide. Market friction, consumer pain points, behavioral insights, retention strategy, real numbers, validated user data, prototypes with code behind them, revenue scenarios, scaling limits, operating margins if we cut unnecessary features from the MVP. Everything I'd mapped alone in silence while the rest of the office rolled their eyes. This time, there were no smirks. No one checked their phones. No one glanced at the clock. Alan didn't nod for approval. He nodded to track logic. He didn't react to flashy slides because I didn't bring any. What he did do was ask questions, good ones, sharp, not aggressive, just exacting, the kind that proves someone's actually listening. What's your defensibility here if a larger platform tries to replicate this? How fast can you scale user acquisition without hemorrhaging service quality? Why this pain point? Why now? I answered each one the way I built the model, clear, structured, no spin. I didn't try to impress him. I didn't have to. I just spoke like the builder I was. When I finished, I stopped talking and closed the laptop. Not to be dramatic, just to let the air settle. Alan leaned back in his chair, looked out the window for a long beat. Then he looked at me and said, "Let's build it. I'll fund it." I didn't say anything at first. I wasn't stunned. I wasn't confused. I was just steady. Like every silent night I'd worked on this had finally opened a door I didn't have to kick down. He kept talking. Details, terms, what he'd want from the cap table, the kind of team I'd need to hire. But my mind was already clicking into a different gear. Not excitement, not relief. Execution. That was the only thing I felt. The quiet engine inside me that had been running for months finally had traction. We shook hands. No pictures. No contracts signed yet. Just the beginning of something real. I walked out of that building knowing everything had changed. Not because I'd gotten lucky, not because I'd gone viral, but because I'd been ready, and someone finally looked close enough to see it. I scheduled the meeting for 9 a.m. sharp, first slot on Rob's calendar. No subject line, just quick sync. He accepted it without comment, probably assuming it was a follow-up on one of the projects I was supposedly re-evaluating. I kept it quiet. No goodbye lunch, no cryptic Slack status. Just walked in with my resignation letter folded cleanly in my pocket. He was already at his desk when I stepped into his office. Coffee in hand. That same confident slouch he always had, like every problem in the world was already solved as long as he was holding a meeting about it. "Morning," he said, not looking up. "What's up?" I sat down, took a breath. "I'm resigning." He looked up then, blinked like he misheard me. "You're... what?" "I'm resigning," I said again, sliding the letter across his desk. His hand hovered over the envelope like he wasn't sure if he should open it or set it on fire. "Can I ask why?" I didn't answer right away. I let the silence do the talking. It was the first time I'd seen him genuinely off balance. He cleared his throat. "Look, Evan, if this is about that meeting or some of the comments that got passed around, it's not," I cut in. "Not entirely a lie. That meeting was just the symptom. The problem was deeper." He shifted in his chair, tried to recalibrate. "Okay, well listen, you've been valuable here. I know I don't say that enough, but you have. Maybe we can work something out. Different role, higher comp, remote days. Whatever's not working, we can fix it." I almost laughed. Not because he was lying, but because it was the first time he'd even hinted that I mattered, and it was only happening because I was already halfway out the door. I looked him in the eye, calm, steady. "You'll never guess who called me," I said. He tilted his head, waiting for the punchline. But there wasn't one. I didn't explain. Some things you don't say out loud. Not because they're secrets, but because they don't belong in certain rooms. This room, this culture, had already shown me its ceiling. I wasn't interested in proving anything here anymore. He gave a tight nod, maybe confused. Maybe realizing that whatever came next was bigger than he could guess. I stood up, shook his hand, and walked out. No fanfare. No final Slack message thanking everyone for the incredible opportunity. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I didn't need to be understood here anymore. I was already building something they couldn't see, and I was never coming back. The day the LLC paperwork came through, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the approval email like it was a birth certificate. Company name, state filing, EIN, everything legal, everything real. It felt strange, not louder, not climactic, just solid, quietly official, the kind of milestone that doesn't demand celebration, but earns respect. Alan wired the first tranche of funding within 48 hours. No back and forth, no investor theatrics. Just a message: build fast, build right. That was the entire brief, and that was all I needed. I called in a few people I'd been watching from a distance for years. A back-end dev from a past internship who could write scalable infrastructure like it was poetry. A UX designer who understood friction in a product the way I understood silence in a room, deeply and instinctively. A product manager who knew how to cut features without cutting purpose. We weren't a dream team. We were a lean team. No bloat, no dead weight, just builders. We didn't have a fancy office, just a WeWork with bad coffee and a shared whiteboard. But the work moved fast. 2 weeks in, we had a working prototype. 4 weeks in, we were testing onboarding with real users from a pilot group I'd quietly curated over the past year. They didn't know the full story. Just that something I'd built was solving a problem they thought they'd just have to live with. And that's when it started to click. This wasn't just the idea I pitched in that meeting. It was the version I was never allowed to finish. Polished, evolved, clearer, stronger. The kind of thing that becomes inevitable once it exists. Every line of code, every screen, every decision. This time, it was mine. Not filtered through 5 layers of feedback loops and politics. Not watered down by committees that cared more about optics than outcomes. We made decisions fast, validated assumptions in real time, and moved on. We weren't building consensus. We were building product. The momentum was different. Not hype, not viral buzz, just consistent forward motion. Progress you could measure in new users, successful sessions, revenue trickling in from early adopters. Nothing flashy, but real. Sometimes I'd stay late after the others left, just watching the dashboard update in real time. Watching usage grow, watching friction drop, watching something I believed in finally breathe on its own. I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone anymore. I was just building what should have existed all along, and for the first time, it wasn't theory. It was live. The first payment hit our Stripe account at 3:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. $79. Monthly subscription. A small company out of Minneapolis. One of the beta users I'd onboarded myself during our early testing rounds. I stared at the notification longer than I probably should have. It wasn't the amount. It was the proof. Someone was willing to pay for what we'd built. That night I walked home instead of taking the train, just to let it settle in. There was no confetti, no high fives, just a quiet satisfaction in knowing that something I sketched out in silence, dismissed, laughed at, memed, was now solving a problem real enough that someone reached for their wallet. We didn't blow up overnight. We didn't trend. That was never the goal. But the growth came. Steady, organic, measurable. We started with 12 early adopters, then 24. By month 2, we were onboarding small teams from different corners of the country, people I'd never met, never pitched, who heard about us through someone else. Word gets out when your product works. Support tickets started coming in, not complaints, but feedback. Loving this feature. Could we do X? This just saved our team 3 hours this week. I read every message, answered most of them myself. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to stay close to the people we were building for. I watched usage metrics climb. Retention was solid, churn low. The activation rate on our onboarding flow was higher than I expected, proof that our UX lead was dialed in. The backend was holding up too, clean, fast, efficient. Every piece working the way it was supposed to. Revenue wasn't huge yet, but it was real. That changed everything. We weren't asking for attention anymore. We were earning it, quietly, consistently. The same friends who sent me screenshots of the meme months ago were now forwarding me LinkedIn posts about how our tool was changing workflows. A few even signed up. Some said nothing, just showed up in our analytics dashboard as users. That was enough. One night, I watched a video on YouTube, a product review, not sponsored, just some guy breaking down why our tool worked better than the alternatives. He had no idea who I was. He just liked the product. That meant more to me than 1,000 retweets ever could. We weren't chasing headlines. We were earning trust. And in this world, trust is a currency no one can fake. The traction wasn't loud. It was honest. And it was ours. I saw the company name come through on the new client list late on a Thursday night. Same logo, same address, same team domain. I froze for a second, staring at it like it might disappear if I blinked. But it didn't. My old company, the one where my pitch became a punchline, the one that turned my silence into a punch they thought I wouldn't feel. They'd signed up through the site. No sales call, no warm intro. Just clicked the demo, liked what they saw, and converted. I pulled up the admin dashboard. There it was. Team license, 1-year contract, paid in full. I didn't say anything. Just sat back and watched as the onboarding sequence kicked in. Automated emails, in-app tutorials, walkthrough videos narrated by a voice actor I'd hired myself. My old team, being onboarded into the product, they once laughed out of the room. They didn't know it was me. I wasn't listed on the site yet. No press releases, no glossy photos with founder bios. I kept it that way on purpose. Not out of shame, but because it wasn't about recognition. Not anymore. It was about execution. I watched their activity logs light up. Rob created a workspace. Brendan invited 5 users. I could have blocked them, could have flagged the account and sent back a snarky rejection email. But I didn't, because this wasn't a grudge match. This was the full circle. They didn't realize the tool they were now depending on, the one solving the workflow issues they used to ignore, was the very idea they cut off halfway through a meeting. No interruptions now, no smirks, just clicks, logins, and usage. I wondered if they recognized any of it. The interface, the core logic, the pain point we solved. Part of me hoped they didn't. Let them think it was just a clever tool from some faceless startup. Let them enjoy the benefits without ever realizing who built it. Because that was the difference between them and me. They needed applause to believe something mattered. I just needed it to work. I closed the dashboard, sat in the dark with the faint glow of the monitor still warming the room. I didn't smile, didn't gloat, just nodded once to myself. They didn't believe in the blueprint, but they were running on it now, and that was enough. People love to assume stories like mine are about revenge, about proving someone wrong, about showing up with success like a loaded weapon and saying, "See, you should have listened." But that was never the point. That meeting, the one with the laughs, the eye rolls, the polite dismissal, it didn't break me. It clarified me. It peeled something back, exposed where I stood in that room, and more importantly, where I didn't. I thought I was building for them. I wasn't. They weren't the audience. They were the mirror. What they reflected back wasn't disrespect. It was disinterest. And that cuts deeper in a way people don't talk about. Because disrespect you can fight. Disinterest? You just absorb it, carry it home, and try to make sense of how something you gave your heart to landed with a shrug. But that's also where I learned something crucial. Not everyone will see your value the first time. Not everyone needs to. Some rooms aren't built for people like me. Quiet builders who don't perform well in meetings but write code at 2 a.m., who don't play politics but understand product flow better than the guy with visionary in his title. That meeting was my final attempt to be heard in a room that was never really listening, and I'm grateful for it, because it gave me permission to stop wasting time. It helped me draw the line between internal validation and actual impact. I wasn't interested in applause anymore. I was interested in building something so useful, so necessary, that the people who once ignored it would use it without even knowing where it came from. And they did. When I watched my old company onboard into the platform, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still. It wasn't about revenge. It was about alignment. About knowing I'd finally stopped asking to be seen in rooms that only value noise and started creating space for the people who value substance. It turns out the market listens more than managers do. Users don't care about politics. They care about solutions. And that's where I live now, outside the echo chamber of office culture, in the clean space where problems meet answers. Quietly. Effectively. The meeting didn't make me bitter. It made me sharper. And once I stopped performing for the wrong audience, I found the right one. They didn't just hear me. They paid to listen. The light in my home office hits different now. It's softer, quieter. No buzz of fluorescent tubes, no glass-walled rooms full of forced laughs and performative energy. Just me, a clean desk, a worn-in chair, and a screen that glows with momentum I used to only dream about. New city, new company, new mission. But the core of it, same as it ever was. People reach out now, old colleagues, new founders, even journalists. They ask what changed. Like there was some secret playbook I suddenly discovered. Like the Billionaire call made it all real. I just smile and say what I always say. Nothing changed. I just kept building. That's it. No magic, no shortcut, just quiet, deliberate work. The kind you do when no one's watching, because you believe in what you're making more than you care about being seen making it. That's what carried me from that meeting room where I was cut off and laughed at, to here, where the product speaks for itself. It still feels surreal sometimes. Waking up to emails from companies I used to pitch to now asking me for a demo, seeing articles mention our tool as a category leader, watching user feedback roll in from places I've never been, teams I'll never meet, solving problems I once thought I was alone in noticing. But beneath the surface, there's no surprise, because this was always the plan. Not fame, not revenge, just freedom. The freedom to build without permission, to scale without bureaucracy, to serve people who care about the thing itself, not who's talking loudest in the room. The mission is cleaner now, sharper, and I protect it fiercely. Sometimes I think about that meeting, not with anger, with clarity. It taught me what to walk away from, what kind of rooms to stop performing in, what kind of validation isn't worth chasing. And most importantly, it taught me that if you build with precision and patience, the right people will eventually find you. And when they do, they won't ask you to speak louder. They'll lean in. That's the world I work in now. Not noise, not theater, just quiet builders solving real problems, moving decisively. So yeah, people ask what changed. The answer? I didn't. I just kept showing up, kept building. And finally, someone with vision listened.